Remember DVDs? You know, these things right here? If you're like me, then you probably have a couple random DVDs hanging out around the house, or you might have a lot more collecting dust at your parents' or other older relatives' home. DVDs and other physical media have been dying a slow death thanks to the internet and the advent of streaming. We've collectively decided that convenience and near infinite choice is more important than intentionality and quality, although there has been a small movement online of people buying more movies as a way of actually owning a piece of art or artwork. Much like buying vinyl,
Dice strains. Throw it.
sure, you can listen to all the music on a streaming service, but buying a physical piece of recorded music is much more intimate and you actually support the artist a little more financially. But don't worry, this isn't a video about how physical media is superior and how we all need to start buying Blu-rays and DVDs again. I'm just as guilty as anyone else for not really buying anything and just streaming everything. I will say that on the rare occasion when I do pop in a Blu-ray into the old PS4, I'm a little blown away by how much nicer the video quality is.
This video quality is great, right?
And I bring up DVDs and Blu-rays because one of the things that made them so special and that is now disappearing is the special features that the movie or show came packaged with. The special features were a peek behind the curtain, a way to see how the sausage is made, so to speak, and to use a kind of gross analogy. DVDs often came with bonus footage and behind-the-scenes footage of the writers, director, actors, and crew on set. It was a way to spend more time in the world these creators had built and a way to see the story behind the story. And that's what I really want to talk about, the story behind the story. Sometimes that second story is what makes people interested at all in the first place, or it's a way to create notoriety and be used as a marketing tool. Think of all the stories you hear about method actors being an absolute menace to work with. Jared Leto on the set of all those DC movies as the Joker. I think I heard more about those shenanigans than the actual movie itself.
Blah, 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 blah.
The story behind the story. I want to talk about when that second story is more of a hindrance, something that can't be spun and used to promote, something that could even be considered a curse. The stage and silver screen are no strangers to superstition, magic, and yes, even curses. The arts have a long history with these things because some, myself included, consider the stories and performances a form of magic themselves. But sometimes magic can become twisted, warped, and turned against the user, bringing unforeseen circumstances and creating a story behind the story, creating legends and cautionary tales. Cursed images and lost media are a very popular subject these days, and I personally love watching random YouTube videos that do deep dives into creepy videos and pictures that have circulated the internet, mysteriously appearing out of nowhere and supposedly leaving destruction in their wake. Even though a lot of them turn out to be some kind of ARG, I love watching a good deep dive or breakdown of the story. And honestly, those YouTubers are just doing God's work, because I do not have the patience or skills to decode and solve some of those things. But before anonymous forum posts and lost creepy children's TV shows from the past, lives the origin of one of the most famous cursed productions, known as the Curse of the Scottish Play. Macbeth by Shakespeare is said to have been engulfed by misfortune and tragedy since the night it premiered in the early 1600s. To this day, it's considered bad luck to say the name of the play out loud in a theater.
Macbeth! Bart, stop saying Macbeth!
For some context as to the environment in which Macbeth was written, King James VI of Scotland had an obsession with witchcraft. His mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, was executed in 1587, and this violent death was said to have inspired his fascination with magic. In 1589, when James and his new wife were sailing back to Scotland from Denmark, their ship passed through a bad storm which nearly drowned them.
I almost drowned. Two skinny little kids.
The king blamed evil spirits of witches for conjuring the storm, so he ordered a witch hunt in the coastal town of North Berwick. When King James VI of Scotland became King James I of England in 1603, his new subjects were eager to show him that they were also down with his views on magic, witches, and the demonic. Soon books, treatises, and articles were being written on the subject, and with that came Shakespeare's Macbeth in 1606. Like I mentioned earlier, Macbeth has been cursed since day one. It's said that Shakespeare did some serious research when it comes to the Weird Sisters or Three Witches. Their chants and the ingredients they used are supposedly from real spells. It's because of this that a coven of witches who objected to Shakespeare using real incantations put a curse on the play. At least that's how the legend goes. The curse must have worked because the first performance of Macbeth back in 1606 had some real issues. The actor who was originally cast to play Lady Macbeth died suddenly, so Shakespeare himself had to step into the role.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
There were also rumors that real daggers were used instead of prop daggers, which resulted in another death. The play has had more than its fair share of tragedies and mishaps over the centuries, so it seems like the Coven's curse is still pretty potent after all this time. But if you accidentally say Macbeth in a theater, there's no need to worry, because by this point we've figured out a way to deactivate the curse. All you have to do is leave the theater, spin around 3 times, spit, curse, any curse word will do apparently, and then knock on the door of the theater to be let back in. Easy as that, centuries of powerful witchcraft and magic are undone. Every day, all day, each of us walk around with what is essentially a movie-making machine in our pockets. Our phones are infinitely capable and vastly powerful tools that would be considered magic themselves not too long ago.
Sorcery.
But because of how integrated they have become in our everyday lives, they've ironically become mundane and commonplace. And in fact, they render a lot of us immobile due to the addictive nature of the apps we use. And that's a completely different topic, but I will say that it almost feels like the magic of our phones is fueled by the life force it can drain from us.
Your soul is mine.
The ability to record and playback movement was a massive invention. I mean, think about how much you interact with videos or recorded media on a daily basis. So let's rewind the clock all the way back to the late 1800s. The Lumiere Brothers, Auguste and Louis, and for this section I may mispronounce some names, but we're just gonna roll with it. Auguste and Louis are about to premiere their new invention, the cinematograph. By this time, motion picture cameras had been invented, but the Lumiere brothers wanted to create a motion picture camera that was better than Thomas Edison's kinetograph. The problem with Edison's kinetograph is that it didn't have any kind of projector. Only one person could use it at a time by viewing the image through an eyepiece or viewfinder. The Lumiere brothers' cinematograph could project an image onto a screen so a group of people could watch at the same time. If you were in the audience during the premiere of this invention, you would have thought you were seeing actual magic. To see moving pictures projected on a screen in front of you, it must have been pretty amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is amazing.
The Lumiere brothers went on to show off their invention around the world, attracting huge crowds everywhere they went. They also went on to produce short films using their cinematograph, making them one of the earliest filmmakers. During one of their demonstrations in 1896, a man named David Devant was in the crowd. And at the time, Devant was one of the most successful magicians in England. He was struck with inspiration and immediately showed this new technology to his business partner and fellow magician, John Maskelyne. They correctly believed that the cinematograph was the future of entertainment and began creating short films. Devant would perform and adapt his magic tricks on film, and soon these short trick films became a staple of magic shows in England. While this was all a huge accomplishment in itself, he would have no way of knowing that the simple decision to sell some equipment would change the trajectory of cinema. You know when you daydream at work and just fantasize about quitting your job to chase some crazy passion you've always had? Just go all in, quit the job, sell your stuff, spend all your savings to go after a dream. That's exactly what a footwear manufacturer in late 1800s Paris did. Georges Milnier sold his share of the family shoe business to his brothers and used that money to buy the Theatre Robert Houdin, a theater dedicated to the performance of stage illusions. In addition to this purchase, he also bought a projector from David Devant from our previous story. While Milnier was experimenting with his new projector, he made a huge cinematic discovery. He figured out that he could stop the camera, change some settings, and then start the camera again, essentially producing a magical transformation on screen. The films he would go on to create would be among the first to use double exposure, stop motion, and slow motion, which is why he is considered the inventor of special effects in movies. Using his knack for invention and background in magic and illusions, he created some of the most iconic and important short films in early cinema, A Trip to the Moon probably being the most famous of those short films. Even if you don't know the name, you've more than likely either seen this exact image or seen it referenced somewhere. Magic has been a part of movies since the beginning. Sometimes I feel like we've become a little jaded because of all the choices and information we have available to us at all times. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else of going to see a movie I absolutely enjoy, but then watching 15 YouTube videos, picking them apart and picking apart every aspect of the film, essentially removing any magic I might have felt in the first place. Even though it can feel like the creative landscape is oversaturated at times, I do think that there are some amazing things being created and posted on social media. I've seen so many short videos, or short films if you want to call them that, just posted on TikTok and available to watch for free. These creators are using the amazing tools we have at our disposal to keep movie magic alive. Sometimes it's easy to forget that Hollywood isn't the only place that produces films, especially living in the US. We're inundated with marketing that won't let us forget about the next cinematic universe event spectacular. But thanks to streaming, access and availability to other sources of media and movies has become so much easier, not only for us, the audience, but for creators to share their work with much less hoops to jump through in terms of distribution. Back to the main point of other places besides Hollywood producing movies. Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno-Garcia takes place in 90s Mexico and follows two people who work in the Mexican film and television industry. This story combines actual movie magic, cursed media, and sprinkles in some Nazi occultism just for fun. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe the main characters are in their mid to late 30s and have been friends since childhood. Montserrat, I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing her name correctly, but Montserrat is what I'm going to go with. Montserrat works as an audio engineer, but is beginning to get burnt out from working long hours and being mistreated at the studio she has been editing out of for years. She has also been living with an unrequited crush on her childhood friend Tristan since they were kids. Tristan used to be a popular actor in Mexican soap operas, but after a car accident left him with some mild facial scarring, he has been working in commercials and as a voice-over artist.
Let's give the voiceover industry something to talk about here.
Tristan moves into a new apartment after he and his girlfriend break up and discover one of his new neighbors in the building is an old director who made some of their favorite Mexican horror films. Montserrat and Tristan begin to visit the old director and talk about movies and what the film scene was like back in his day.
Are you saying that things were better back then, even though there was stuff like this?
And during one of these visits, the director reveals that his career faltered because of actual magic gone wrong and a curse resulting from it. One of his co-creators was a Nazi occultist who fled to Mexico and believed that they could use film to perform and enhance magic rituals. Silver Nitrate film was briefly used in the movie industry, and they believed the innate magic properties of silver would add to the magic rituals being recorded. Montserrat and Tristan get involved, and things quickly get out of hand.
This is bad. You are in big trouble.
I won't say anything more about the plot because I think that's enough to get you started on the story and pick up the book if you're interested. I absolutely loved this story, and a big part of that is I started my content creation journey years ago as an audio person. It started with music, and then I moved on to on-set sound and dialogue recording, and eventually ran audio for a local TV news station. But there's a lot of love shown in this book for the behind-the-scenes work done by technical professionals on movie productions. And the relationship between Montserrat and Tristan is extremely well written too. You can really feel that they've known each other since childhood, and the awkwardness and pain that comes from a one-sided crush is beautifully woven throughout the story. They both are aware that this unspoken desire to be more than friends is one-sided and mutually known. The way these two characters navigate these complicated emotions while fighting curses, witches, and magic spells is wonderful. This book really sticks the landing when it comes to balancing the more serious and spooky elements with the lighter, funnier scenes. The pacing is done really well, and I just wanted to keep reading to find out what was going to happen, and the action and horror set pieces are broken up with some really fantastic, quieter character moments. The horror and violence of the story bursts in during unexpected times, but does just enough to remind you that the characters and the stakes are real and only getting higher. Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno-Garcia was one of my favorite reads this year. If you're looking for something fun and a little spooky to pick up, then I can't recommend it enough, especially if you like old cinema or have an interest in the nuts and bolts of the post-production world. Movies, media, magic, and curses have all been intertwined since the beginning. I think the sense of wonder that movies and TVs can instill within us is wonderful, and even though I feel like it gets harder to find, both because as we get older our sense of wonder dulls, and because our access to so much information and media has colored our expectations a little bit, I think it's important to step back and remember that these little cameras and phones we use every day give us what would be considered magical powers just a few decades ago. We have access to all the knowledge in the world, and we have the ability to share it without leaving the couch. Our phones also have the side effect of being able to drain our life force and steal our time and willpower, so it is very much a powerful cursed item. So I don't know, I guess the moral of the story is that we have to use these devices to function in modern society, but the real trick is to manage your addiction level to just the right amount.